Yeah.
I was watching the old Disney movie, 1973 Robin Hood movie, and one
What?
of the
Why are you
over the
watching this
weekend,
movie?
over the weekend,
You
and
have nothing else to do but watch a 1973 Robin Hood movie?
apparently, I mean, it's hard for me to argue that I have better things to do when that's how I spent,
Yeah.
an hour and a half of my weekend. But one of the or what I perceived as one of the undertones of the movie is the evil government, or the king, who's the government, taxing
Yeah.
people to death. And I don't know what the political climate in the U.S. was like when Walt Disney made this movie, but I just thought it was relevant after us, being in this high inflation, and looking at the government taxing us to death. I thought it was funny, and I
Well, we
don't know if it
didn't
was intentional.
ideologically, I mean, so interest rates, they've given money back to the poor, I guess, with this interest rate or this GST holiday, right? So they're being Robin Hood and giving it back. I don't know if that's necessarily the ideal that they want to do, but it seems like we're headed into. I don't know how much I want to get into this. We didn't plan this, so if this might come off the cuff a little bit. But it seems like the rich are getting richer right now, and certainly in the U.S., the richest administration in history. The who's who of billionaires are lined up at the front row at Trump's inauguration. The things that they're cutting benefit, or the policies that they're enacting benefit big business, benefit these billionaires. And it feels like, to me, if I look forward to the next 3-4 years, that we will get that upswelling of, hey, like, these guys are rich enough. Let's take some of that money and invest back into people.
I think
And
if he executes his plan to make energy less expensive, that's part of the game plan. That benefits everybody. So,
sure.
and I think that when you tax heavily, specifically on energy, the very wealthy will find a way through it, or at very least they can afford it. The middle class will get squeezed, but the lower class, they just won't get energy. So when you
Right.
overtax, right? So
Yeah.
if he executes on that, I think that will be helpful, to everybody. I don't know. We're gonna
I just
see.
see I just see the pendulum swinging over from, like, the rich get richer to an upswelling of driven by the people, and let's do that. And I think that comes through in the underlying message that things are too expensive. Inflation is too high. And now we're seeing inflation, at least here in Canada, we're seeing inflation come down, interest rates come down. Things are, not rising as fast. And in fact, if you take out mortgage interest inflation, that number of 1.8% is down to 0.7% year over
Yeah,
year is inflation cost. So if you think about that, like, things are getting less expensive,
which is
or
recessionary, an indicator of recession, right?
yeah, I mean, if we're not spending as much money and things are getting going down, and we're heading towards a recession, we're going to talk about this, maybe tariffs. The Bank of Canada will have no choice but to reduce interest rates, and that's where I see a quarter point, 1/4 point interest rate cut for the rest of the year as being unlikely, and I also see like 5 being unlikely on the other side of that. Like, I just don't think we have a big enough recession in order to justify 5 more interest rate cuts this
Which
year.
brings me back to that conversation about, are we, the metrics that we use to calculate inflation, are they still relevant? Are they still accurate? It's essentially the same equation that we've used prior to, the mass globalization that we've experienced. Maybe time to look at it again. It
Right.
gets blurry.
Well, we're using, this is, the 1.8% is headline inflation. This is the one that makes all the headlines, but there are several, I think there's about 30 different metrics that they look at when making their decisions. So, Canada announces this is how much things are costing for everybody. I think it's fair to say that how much people spend on shelter is a reflection of how much things cost to people. But if you're just going to make your decisions on does the Bank of Canada make a, one-to-one comparison of this is what our policy rate is, and this is what inflation is, and not look at any of the other 29 different metrics? Probably not. They're looking at all the different things and then making a decision from there.
So you're saying that it's already built in, is the flexibility, and I agree with that, and because the employment or the labor market is one of the factors, a major factor. There's something else I was going to mention.
The employment numbers was a big factor. Employment didn't look as good, and they dropped the policy rate. And if our employment numbers continue to look poor, I see that as being as much of further, that and inflation as being further.
That's a catalyst for another for a rate cut or more rate cuts, or up to 5 rate cuts, or however you want to look at it. But I mean, we're going to cheer on the labor market, and we're going to hope that whoever our new administration is can help out with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll find. We'll have probably 2 new prime ministers in 2025. That's the, I guess the over under is 1.5. Are you the over or the under?
I'm betting the over on that one.